All right, thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. So do us a favor, subscribe to the YouTube channel, participate in the conversation by commenting below or upvoting the video, and of course hitting the bell for notifications whenever a new video goes up, which is actually fairly frequent. And before we get started with John, though, I want to thank LinkedIn Jobs for being the official college football recruiting sponsor across the Locked On College Network. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. John, thank you so much for coming on the show again. I think we are going to hit the defensive line from Ole Miss at the end of this, but Ole Miss got a commitment since the last time we talked. Braxton Myers out of Texas. What do you know about him?
Yeah, this was a long time coming, right? Even before he decommitted from USC, there was a lot of Ole Miss conversation. He had taken an unofficial visit to Oxford, and really the temperature turned up for a potential flip. So once he finally did back off that USC decommitment, it felt like a matter of when and not if Myers would jump on board with the Rebels. He since has, and he took the official visit this past weekend as well. So all is well in that hunt for a really intriguing Texas defensive back. You know, you watch his tape. He's 6'1", 185 pounds. He's on the bigger side, but man, he really attacks the football. We see him making plays on the ball week in, week out. Had a handful of interceptions as a junior, and then I watched his most recent tape from last week. He had a pick six in that game. So a kid who's incredibly instinctive when the football is in the air, unafraid to come up and run support as well with that big frame. And he's playing in Coppell, Texas, right? Big time Texas high school football, exactly the type of recruit you want to bring in from a competitive standpoint. So I think there's a lot of nice factors with this verbal commitment. One, the optics, right? Bringing in another USC decommitment, if you will, right? We hit the portal from the Ole Miss perspective and brought in a couple USC transfers, and now you're affecting Lincoln Riley and company on the recruiting trail in all but a flip of Braxton Myers. Always good to get back into the state of Texas as well from the Ole Miss perspective. And then on top of that, you're bringing in a versatile defensive back. You could easily picture Myers lining up as a traditional free safety type. So think of the A.J. Finley role that we're seeing him execute so well, or also some kind of hybrid where he's playing a little bit of slot corner, maybe even on the outside as well. So I think there's a nice group of versatility that comes with Myers' game on top of all the great pedigree that he brings to the table. So really like this get. I think it's easy to sell Ole Miss on the offensive side of the ball, but we're starting to see with this class that the defensive side is coming around, and it's reflective of what we see on Saturdays, right? I mean, this Ole Miss defense has made a ton of plays, a ton of turnovers, so it makes sense for the high school recruiting to start to reflect a little more positivity on that front as well.
You know, with Tysheem Johnson 2 years ago and Davison Igbinosun and those guys, you really can see in the defensive backfield, they have a type.
Yeah, oh yeah. Oh, yeah, long, rangy, versatile, and physical. I think all of these defensive backs are not only willing to challenge you at the line of scrimmage if they're playing cornerback, but if they're coming downhill, they're coming downhill with bad intentions. Just exactly how you would draw it up in SEC country, right? You need big defensive backs who can contend with your A.J. Brown body types out there, right? 50-50 balls, back, shoulder, all that stuff. But then you also need guys who can come up and help and run support, right? Because you're still going to play Arkansas and Alabama and Texas A&M who always want to establish that run game. So you've got to find hybrids because just in the SEC West, look at the type of offenses that you face. It is everything from air raid down in Starkville all the way to power spread football with Arkansas and what Auburn used to do. So you get a whole wide spectrum of offensive skill sets. So you need versatile defensive backs and physical defensive backs that could still cover and play the ball.
Yes, absolutely. Anyway, we got all these commits, and I think Ole Miss has like 9 out of 12 commits or 8 out of 11, something like that, blue chip type commits. This is actually a fairly highly rated recruiting class. It's just small at the moment. What's the next commitments that might be coming down the pipe? Somebody we need to pay attention to.
Well, I just saw him set a commitment date for Friday. So as we record this on Wednesday, My eyes shift to Marvin Burks, another defensive back projection, this time coming out of St. Louis. This is a prospect who Ole Miss has been right there in the running for quite a while. He took an official visit to Oxford in the summer, and he has since returned for a game. I think he was at the Kentucky game just a couple weeks ago. He's got this really strong top five, right? The in-state Missouri Tigers are in there. Texas A&M is in there, as well as a few others. But really, Ole Miss has been right at the forefront of this recruitment since the summer months, since he took that official visit for those the month of June, I should say, and then showed more reciprocation in that return visit to campus. I think at that point, you really start to feel good about Ole Miss's chances sooner rather than later, and then boom, it comes out that he's going to make his decision public on Friday, October 21st. So it looks like we're going to go back to back here in the DB department in terms of the next two Ole Miss verbal commitments. I'd be surprised if Burks ended up at another program. And you guessed it when you talk about his size, 6'1", 180 plus pounds there as well, with two-way experience, running back, wide receiver, and some defensive back experience. So a lot to like about him if and when he picks the Rebels.
Yeah, and if you look at our current defensive line, let's switch gears a little bit real quick. With so many transfers that have come in and maybe some names that people haven't paid attention to, just give a little background of like Xavian Harris and Jared Ivey and Cedric Johnson, just in case people don't know.
Well, yeah, guys coming from different standpoints, right? I mean, from a size standpoint, my gosh, Xavian Harris, I remember seeing him listed last year. You know, he's listed, 6'7", 6'8", or whatever it is. And you always, journalistically, Steve, you're always like skeptical. You're like, come on, this is really a giant among high schoolers. And then it went down to the Alabama-Mississippi All-Star Week, and I was like, oh, yep, yeah, he is every bit of 6'8" and well over 300 pounds. An unbelievable physical specimen when you look at him. And yeah, everything's not there. It's hard for him to play the leverage game and all that stuff. But when he's on, he is an absolute force to be reckoned with. It's going to remind a lot of folks of Raekwon Davis, right? Another Mississippian who at that size, really wreaks havoc on the defensive interior. Now he's doing it at the NFL level. So yeah, Harris as a freshman getting some run at Ole Miss now. As you informed me, he was the one who blocked that extra point against Kentucky, which was a really big deal in that game. So when you're that long and that big, you're going to see the field a little bit sooner. And if memory serves with Harris, this was a highly contested recruit, right? This was something that went back and forth. I know at one point there was a ton of buzz for Mississippi State. This is one of those classic back and forth Egg Bowl battles, and then Ole Miss won out there in the end. A couple went the other way, but Harris went the Ole Miss way. With Cedric Johnson, a little bit more conventional, right? Alabama kid coming out of Mobile, legitimate pass rusher. He was a long, lean type prospect. Gosh, he must have been class of 2020, 2019 maybe. He's been on campus for quite a bit there at Ole Miss. But just another prospect who, really took advantage of a big senior season there at Davidson High School, which has produced a ton of prospects from the state of Alabama. And despite some injuries, right back in the fold, right? A guy who's gotten a ton of experience there at Ole Miss, and now he's back healthy. A guy can get after the passer, just a really solid player on the edge. And then Jared Ivey comes as the new modern recruit, right? Transfer portal out of Georgia Tech. I remember talking to him. He visited Ole Miss, and I think the next day he was like, man, I'm done. He's like, I'm done with the process. I'm going to Ole Miss coming out of Georgia Tech. And he was just so gung-ho about the team and the feel in Oxford. And you start to put his experience on top of that. And he was a really important get for the portal staff. I know it was so easy last year to focus on Dart and Trigg and some of these Zach Evans, these eye-popping offensive transfers that came in, but some of these defensive transfers were under the radar at the time, but they're starting to pop up, starting to make a lot more plays on Saturdays for the Rebels. I think Jared Ivey, Ladarius Tennyson come to mind here immediately, the linebacker, Brown as well. That group is holding their own from a production standpoint. But yeah, I just remember Jared Ivey being so excited about his Ole Miss visit, he basically just told me like, "Hey, I'm just gonna go there, and that's it." So I think he went in the portal midweek, and by the following Monday, he was already like portal committed to Lane Kiffin and company. So that was a really big deal, and obviously he's taken full advantage.
All right, before I let you go, we're mid-season. Quinshon Judkins surprise you at all?
I think the ability to climb the depth chart was somewhat surprising, right? This was a big loaded running back room, even though there was some attrition. But in terms of once he got there, his production and his ability, not surprising. You know, I used to live in the state of Alabama, still cover it very, very closely. And I was at the last two games Judkins played in high school. His state championship game, where he ran for 200 yards and ran over a bunch of kids along the way, and the Alabama-Mississippi game, where he was great in the hole and in space, where they threw him the football a little bit more, and he commands that attention. You know, he's a big physical back. Junior year was a little bit banged up. You know, Notre Dame was in on him. Auburn was really trying to keep him in state. But once he got hurt, teams cooled on him a little bit. Ole Miss stayed with it, and he rewarded that program. He loves Kiffin. He loved Kevin Smith at the time, and committed to the Rebels. A little bit of drama leading into signing day. It looked like after Smith went to Miami, there was going to be a little bit of questions around Judkins, but he stuck with the Rebels, signed early, and that was that. But a big physical, like just a guy you saw and said, that's an SEC back, man. He's coming downhill at you. He's getting better as the game progresses, and we've seen a lot of that thus far at Ole Miss. If I'm surprised in any one element, Steven, it's the speed. It's the top end speed. We don't expect bigger guys to run away from SEC players the way Judkins has as a true freshman. We saw him do it in high school, but you just expect as you go up to the next level, it's that much harder to produce the chunk plays. But, you know, here we are, and Judkins looks like easily the top freshman running back in the country.
Yeah. I think National Freshman of the Year is on the table for that kid if he keeps it up once it gets going. Anyway, get more on the SEC by making Locked On SEC your second listen. Everyday host Chris Gordy and local experts of Locked On take you across the SEC in 30 minutes. Locked On SEC. Hey, John, thank you so much. We'll move on to the linebackers next time we speak.
Sounds good, my friend. Thanks for having me.
All right, take care, bud.